Welcome back, coaches. Episode 2 from Teams of Men from our new series. It's got a lot of great buzz called We Read It So You Can Act on It, where we deep dive scientific studies, research, educational journals, anything that's really evidence-based and is typically exceptionally long. And we recognize, having been a coach myself for 15 years as a head coach at Division III men's basketball, I know the time limits on your day. So let me and our team at Teams of Men deep dive and read these studies and give you in our video synopsis here and then on some of our social media platforms why those studies are important. What are the takeaways from those studies? What are the action steps from the great work some of these researchers have done for you in your day-to-day interactions with your male athletes? And, I think that fits perfectly with our mission in Teams of Men to empower coaches, to enlighten players to the potential of a reimagined manhood, one that's full of emotional fluency, emotional compassion, agility, empathy, healthy relationship skills. And in doing that and identifying the man box that has kind of constricted all of us, we break free from that and suddenly we're change agents and we're eradicating and fighting gender violence and oppression in all its forms, all the while growing and balling out on all the fields and play surfaces that we all encounter. So this is episode 2 of We Read It So You Can Act on It. Welcome. All right, now this week's educational paper, our source that we're citing, is right here. We're going to put it down here in a cutaway. Maybe we'll scan over to it as well. Family Violence in Football: The Effect of Unexpected Emotional Cues on Violent Behavior. And this is a study done by David Card and Gordon B. Dahl, and we'll put the official citation down here as well. And we're really interesting because the study itself is framing reactions post-loss for NFL teams in their home cities. And if you're a coach out there and you're thinking to yourself, well, Kip, maybe I'm not a football coach, or Kip, maybe I'm not even an NFL fan, I prefer college or high school. Take the NFL focus out the window and focus in on these 4 takeaways we have for you that specifically have to do with emotional fluency, emotional agility, and what a lot of people probably call emotional control, but we really want to lean into emotional fluency because at Teams of Men, we really follow Dr. Susan David's philosophy that we have to name it to tame it. We have to be able to name and identify emotions in ourselves and others in order to flow with them and flow past them. I don't think we can constrict and hide emotions in our players. I think that's a man box principle where if you shove it all down and ignore it and grit your teeth in emotional control, that you'll be able to go about your day as a robot. And we don't want that. We want our young men growing and learning how to flow through rage, how to flow through sadness, disappointment, envy, jealousy. Those things are going to happen. We can't prevent those. We're all imperfect beings. Those are going to happen in their life. So I thought this study was perfect because it takes a low stakes situation, an NFL game, and being a lunatic Cowboys fan like I am, I know the emotions that are heaped upon me that I experience while watching my favorite team of all time. But I also recognize the learning points that those can be because I end up in states and behaviors and decisions and word choice in the midst of a poor Cowboys performance that I almost always regret. So I thought this was universally applicable in terms of emotional fluency. Maybe not directly to everyone's an NFL fan, but if you're a coach of male athletes, I think these next 4 points are important for you from this study that have nothing to do necessarily with your NFL fandom. So let's dive into point number 1. All right, as you can see here, and we'll cut away on the screen, research indicates a significant 10% increase in domestic violence incidents, specifically male on female at-home violence, following unexpected losses by NFL teams. Now, keep that in mind. Unexpected male-female at-home violence after a team loses. Now, I know we all recognize the ridiculousness of that, and despite the fact we say ridiculous, unbelievable, crazy, it's a reality. The study proves it. And I think the coaching implication from this first takeaway is coaches should be aware of the emotional impact of game outcomes in general, okay, they can have on human beings in their midst, on their staff, on themselves, and what that impact has on your behaviors off the field. You must be in the business of addressing emotional management and the consequences of a failure of emotional fluency or emotional agility. Increase as men get older. Outcomes might have more stakes in their lives, and personal relationships and personal actions can be greatly affected if we're unable to flow through an emotion and we have to act out with our hands, with our words, with our bodies to process it. This is that emotional fluency, emotional agility again, where we can't avoid the feeling, but if we flow with it, name it to tame it, we can get through it without causing harm. So that's my big takeaway for point one. Coaches, you cannot pretend, and I know you already kind of know this because you know the importance you put on game outcomes yourself. Don't forget your kids do. I know a lot of times we can slide into, oh, kids don't care as much as me. That may not be true. And the amount of that they do care, we're training them now. When stuff matters to me, when stakes raise, when my personal investment in something matters, I've got to be very attuned to my behaviors that I'm doing in order to prove that it matters to me. And that's where I think this study in point one matters so much. The next point we'll cut away to. The study emphasizes the critical role of emotional cues and pregame expectations in triggering violent behaviors. Upset losses, especially when the home team was anticipated to win, have a more profound impact on subsequent violence. Okay. We need, as coaches, then, your takeaway from this point in the study. We've got to educate players on handling disappointment and stress. They're going to come. Okay. I think sometimes we get so caught up in the preparation and the building of our team and the belief system that we can win, which is great. I'm not saying we should stop that, but we also got to give them reps that the world doesn't give us undefeated seasons. They are not going to have a life. You may have one yourself in the basketball, football, baseball realm. They're not going to have undefeated lives. And in order for them to handle disappointment and stress, especially in unexpected versions of disappointment and stress, we have to develop resilience, and we've got to give them coping mechanisms. They're already looking to us constantly for mechanism toolkits to improve. They're used to us giving them things that make them better. We can do that as well with resilience. Because as the study shows, just watching a game that you expect the Cowboys to win and they don't triggers emotions in letdown that can lead to violent behaviors. And we have to give kids in our sports programs reps early. So when they get to that, that doesn't mean I'm not still upset the Cowboys lost to the Commanders, but I know how to process it and get through without people in my orbit being in danger. Point three. There's a notable increase in violence shortly after an upset loss, directly correlating with the emotional aftermath of the game. This effect is more pronounced in games of higher stakes, such as playoff matches or games against rivals. And now just think about the football viewing season. Let's use it as an example, since that's what the study's based on. It's full of rivalry games. It's full of playoff games, postseason games, Super Bowls, championships, bowl games. And if there's a notable increase in violence after losses here, then we've got work to do. Okay, coaches should focus on strategies to help players decompress and process emotions post-game, especially after high stakes or emotionally charged losses, Creating an environment, and I think space and routines where you can process emotions. I think we love coaches, where I have to emphasize more. One of the points I've been willing to die on a hill for is you got to stop doing post-game speeches. You can celebrate post-game and send kids to interviews to celebrate heights, but you got to stop going in, win or lose, and running your mouth. You haven't processed emotionally. You don't have the emotional fluency currently with the high stakes of what just happened to really avoid harming kids. And you don't have the information from the film. We're all believers in film. We love film. We should. The film will tell us the truth. What you feel seconds after the missed field goal, the missed free throw, the strikeout, if bases loaded, is probably not accurate. We got to stop doing post-game blow-ups, screaming matches. It doesn't help nobody. And it shows a routine to the guys that when they get out in the world and they have a loss, their post-game debrief with their wife, their kid, their partners, their business friends can be an explosion. So I think this point highlights that we have to have time and space for decompression and name it. Hey, we don't do post-games because we want to avoid emotional harm. We want to be able to go process our emotions independently, and we'll come back tomorrow with clear minds, able to process truth, which is the film. And then you can have your, hey, we got to get better, we got to correct. But I think this one highlights, stop doing post games. And no, I didn't say give them fruit roll-ups, but honestly, God, you might. Give them some oranges, give them some Gatorade, tell them to go home. Okay. Last one in our We Read It So You Can Act On It, episode 2 of this brand new series from Teams of Men. We'll put the image up here. Study says the findings highlight the need to consider external emotional triggers, like sports outcomes, in understanding the dynamics of domestic violence. Okay, and where does that lead for us as coaches? We have a role in fostering awareness of intent versus impact, Okay, because it's not enough to say, oh man, I just snapped, the game I just blacked out and I heard something. That's not enough. Your intent doesn't cover your ass from the harm you may have. And we have to integrate education and emotional regulation into our everyday coaching practices. Okay, we have to be able in the middle of practice to name emotions that we're feeling to start with. Start there, model for the guys. Guys, right now I am experiencing frustration with our performance. Right now I'm experiencing anger with our lack of building on previous momentum. Name those things. You're still feeling them. I'm not telling you to pretend you don't feel things. But when you name that you're experiencing the feeling, this is from Dr. Susan David as well. When you name, I am feeling, rather than I am pissed, I am feeling pissed. You take its power over you away because you are no longer that thing. You are experiencing it. But now that you can name it and see its effects on you, you can remove yourself from its effects. And your guys will still be aware that you're not happy with their performance. Okay? But you're also modeling how they can begin to see, name, and tame emotions before it gets to outbursts of harm. Okay? This is reps in emotional regulation. This is educational, intentional space for emotional fluency. This is just as important to your job as your clipboard. And listen, this isn't just for when they're husbands and fathers later on in life. This is for in the middle of a high stakes game in a crazy environment where somebody from the crowd pops off at your guy. This is where a ref makes a horrendous call. This is where some other opponent is spouting off to your guy and trying to trigger somebody that's doesn't have the reps in emotional fluency to get them flustered and out of the game. It's not enough for you to say, or mental toughness, when you haven't repped it. We have to rep these things. There it is, coach. Episode 2. We read it so you can act on it. And I hope, once again, we've given you 4 or 5 things that you can build into your coaching toolkit today based on the great work of the authors of this study. Okay, people are putting out fantastic research-backed, fact-based, evidence-backed findings that can help us in our profession build men of empathy, men of compassion, men of healthy relationship skills. And along the way, onboarding those skills only increase who they are as an athlete in your program as well. Kip Ioane, Teams of Men. Like, follow, subscribe, as always, to this YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time.